Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to the Blooms and Beyond podcast that uncover plant history, culture, and management through the lens of science. I'm your host, Ping. How's everyone doing today? I am doing great because I'm excited to have all this wonderful information or conversations ahead of me with one of my favorite people and my dear friend here, Michael Martin at the University of Georgia. So in today's episode, I have Dr. Michael Martin to give us an introduction to the green industry and what's behind the scene of the plant. Dr. Michael Martin has years of experience in horticulture, working closely with the green industry and academia. So we are going to pick his brain today to get more about the plant and all the stories behind the scene. I don't want to steal any of thunder from him today, so let's jump right into it. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Dr. Michael Martin. I hope you enjoy it. Good morning, Michael. Welcome to the podcast. Before we get into
Thank you for having me.
before we get into any of those wonderful stories and experience, can you tell us a little bit of who you are and what you do?
So I am Michael Martin. I am currently the Science, Research, and Regulatory Programs Director with American Hort in the Horticultural Research Institute, HRI. I have been working in the horticulture industry almost my entire life. One of my first jobs was when I was 5, sticking azalea cuttings because that was the easiest job I could do. And I have really never left the industry. Every job I've had, every experience internship I've ever done has been directly related to the horticultural industry in some shape, form, or fashion. So it has been a lifelong endeavor for me, and it is something I truly enjoy doing.
Oh, that's great because I feel like you have some similar trajectory in terms of the horticulture because I did my first horticulture in Denver was my gardenia cutting when I was 10 years old. But I never thought I would end up in horticulture, but here we are. Along the conversation that you just mentioned, for those out there who doesn't know what American Hort is, can you tell us a little bit more of that? And then also a little bit more about like you mentioned that you grow with plants. So basically you're a nature kid of horticulture, right? Can you tell us a little bit more of those stories your work experience along the line?
Absolutely. So American Hort is the National Trade Association for nurseries, greenhouses, independent retail stores, anyone that works with or in ornamental horticulture. We have a legislative arm in DC. We have 2 lobbyists and a consulting horticulturist there. We have staff now all over the country. I'm in Georgia, and so we're here to serve the industry. If there's an issue currently, we're dealing with cotton jasset or 2-spotted cotton leafhopper. It's an issue here in the Southeast, and so we go in and we work with federal agencies, the state agencies, our growers in those areas to help them understand the impacts of pest or disease, anything along those lines. And so we're really here as a service to the industry to help them move forward, help them grow bigger and better. And whatever needs that they may have as an industry, we're there to serve and help meet those needs. It's one of those things we talk about jobs you don't know exist. I never knew this job existed, and it is my dream job. I get to work with the people that I grew up with as growers, the people I went to school with, college, my doctorate. They're now researchers. I get to work with them on a daily basis and get paid. That is my job. And I'm the matchmaker. So with the Horticultural Research Institute, HRI, that is our research foundation, the foundation arm of American Hort. And so we provide scholarships, research grants, and in the last 3 or 4 years, we have started a leadership academy to help build and bridge the next generation of leaders in the industry. And so all of that is industry supported. We don't get any outside money. There's no federal money. There's no state money, really. We do have some state partners that contribute, but for the most part, everything that is brought into HRI is from the industry. And so we're extremely happy that they continue to support our endeavors through HRI. But my job is basically, if you as a grower have a question, have an idea, have a problem, I play matchmaker, and I find the researcher that has an expertise in that area, and I bring y'all together, and y'all are able to work through that problem. And if it's something of a scale that the researcher says, hey, let's put in a grant, well, they put in a grant, and we have almost a year-long process for grant reviews and evaluations, and then we'll award a grant. And so by that way, the industry is helping to fund itself through research to make it a better product, a better place, a better service. So it is my dream job.
Yeah, so I had the privilege of working with Michael closely with some of the grant for the HRI. So I know that you're a horticulture kid grow up, and then so did you get your like master or bachelor degree and master degree all in horticulture, where you switched field a little bit along the line?
I strayed isn't the right word, but I went into ag ed, agricultural education. But I'll go back and I'll say in my youth, I had mentors that were phenomenal. Bob and Bill Head at Headley Nursery, their sister Janet Lee, their parents, they were very formative for me. Jeff and Lisa Beasley at Transplant Nurseries down in Livonia, Georgia. The Headley is in Seneca, South Carolina, where I grew up. My high school ag teacher, he was the one that really showed me that horticulture is not just fun, but a career. That you could actually go out and earn money. You could make your living in that. We were a small high school in Walhalla, South Carolina. We had 4 greenhouses, and we only sold plants from the 1st of March through Mother's Day. And it wasn't uncommon for us to bring in $125,000 in that time frame. But as I moved forward, I went to Clemson University in Clemson, South Carolina for my bachelor's. Clemson, a 15-minute drive from where I grew up. And because of my ag teacher, because of how influential he was in my life, how important FFA was in my development as a leader, as a high school student, I decided I was going to do a master's in ag ed. And I did a master's in adult outreach and education, as well as my teaching certificate for high school ag ed. And then I did some horticulture minor in there. I went and taught for a year, decided it was not for me. And Ping knows my wife. My wife taught for 10 years. My mother-in-law taught for, she's still technically teaching, but close to 35, 40 years. My mom taught for 35 years. My dad taught for 40 years. And so I was like,
Teaching is not your thing. It's not your thing.
teaching isn't my thing.
Yeah.
And I will say this, there is nothing wrong with deciding, hey, this is not where I want to be. I need to go back and look at something else. So I left the teaching field and I found another area of horticulture that we don't talk about, phytosanitary work. So I worked as a nursery inspector in South Carolina for about 5 years. It was a fantastic job. They gave me a truck, a gas card, and said, go look for bugs, diseases, and invasive plants at these nurseries. And I was driving 1,000 miles a week. It was fantastic. We drove all over the central South Carolina, visiting nurseries, doing their inspections. And I left that and decided I want to start a native plant nursery. Where I grew up, there's 3 lakes, Lake Jocassee, Lake Kiwi, and Lake Hartwell. Lake Kiwi in particular, the group that owns the lake, they were requiring if you put in a new dock or did any shoreline restoration, you had to do riparians on planting. And there was nobody in the area that had the plant material. We opened a nursery. We ran it for 10 years. It was a fantastic opportunity, fantastic learning experience for me, for my family. And then I got a wild hair and said, I'm going to apply to the University of Georgia for a PhD. And through a whole process, I met this young man. He was a new faculty member. He was the nursery extension specialist, Ping's predecessor, Matthew Chappell, who's now back at Virginia Tech. He wasn't even on my interview list, but Paul Thomas, who fantastic researcher, fantastic man, who's unfortunately passed. His office was down the hall from Matthew's, and PT stood up, walked past me, yelled down the hall, Chappell, get down here. And so Matthew comes walking down the hall. PT hands him my resume and said, Michael's looking to do a doctorate, has strong nursery background. We talked for 2 minutes and that was it. And a week later, I got an email from Matthew, and it was, if you apply and are accepted, I'll take you as my graduate student. And so that brought me to Athens. That was 2009. And other than a short stint back in Clemson, I've been in Athens almost the entire time.
Wow.
And in that, working for the university, working for retail companies, wholesale, providing lighting for the greenhouse industry, it has been an interesting trip. And
Yeah.
now here I'm at American Hort. I get to work with fantastic researchers like you. I get to work with the growers, and it truly is my dream job.
So that's why I feel like your experience in and out can give us a little bit more of the information that people out there would not know, because like you mentioned before, there are tons of career or job opportunities that you would never think it's even exist in horticulture, because a lot of people talking about horticulture, they're like, oh, what do? You just grow plants. No,
Grow
there's
plants.
way more than that, because we have a whole task force to support the plant. And we have retailer, we have garden center, we have the landscape, we have everything else in between to have a strong thriving industry. So it's not just growing plants, it's everything there's a lot of things behind the scene.
When you go to buy, let's say, a geranium in the spring, that's the finish line for that plant.
Yeah.
Because it's mid-September right now. The companies that produce the cuttings for the geraniums, they're producing those cuttings for the spring of 2026 right now.
Yeah.
And we're 3-4 months out from 2026. And those cuttings are produced in Central and South America. They're brought in. There's an inspection process there. There's transportation. There's all of these things. Then when it finally gets to the finished nursery or the finished grower, it's going to be there for 3 to 6 months, depending on the plant. And this is just herbaceous. Woody plant materials, it's even a longer time frame. And so when you go in and say, oh, this is a beautiful plant, it's a 6-8 month journey to get it to you to say, yes, this is the plant I want to buy. And then there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people involved to get it from a tiny cutting in another country, sometimes on another continent, to your local store. And so there are so many hands, so many different things that go into just getting that plant to the finish line. And like you say, there are so many jobs. Every week I learn about a new job. I do this for whatever the case may be. I'm this kind of plant health specialist. I'm an entomologist that specializes in this. It's a wide field.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to like a local garden center and you pick this geranium or hydrangea, you're like, oh, this is a good plant. But I would like you to think about and trace it back to the plant, behind the plant. And there are like where it might be just your local garden center, but before that, where did it come from?
I'll go back and touch on this. Plant breeders. When you go to buy that plant, 5, possibly even 10 years ago, there was a plant breeder that was looking for a combination of genes, traits, whatever the case may be, that they thought would sell.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that people would be interested in, or it provides resistance to a disease, a pest, whatever. And so they have bred this plant, and there might be millions, billions of dollars tied up in developing a new plant product.
Yeah.
And then you start with that cuttings, and so the cutting stage. And so when you see that plant, it's not just, oh, it was a month-long thing or a quick process. People's entire lives and careers could be completely wrapped up in development of this new plant.
Yeah, I'm glad that it really just like all of a sudden hit me in my brain right now. I was just like, I would say the breeders like the designer or for a fashion. If you're in a fashion industry, those are the designers who would say the trends that will provide the product that they think it will be popular in the future.
They truly are. And the interesting thing for me is you go to the store and you're like, I want a red petunia.
Yeah.
The red petunia you bought last year is not the same variety as it's available this year necessarily.
No.
It's not. And it's every year there is a new, to you as the consumers, it's a red petunia. It's the color I want. But it's a different variety every year.
Yeah.
Because as the breeders, again, they're trying to improve the production of it. There's something that they're trying to improve on. And every year they're developing that new variety to help meet the needs of the growers, of the industry itself, and then as the consumers.
Yeah,
So it's
a lot of times maybe the consumer in and itself, they cannot tell the difference or the nuance between the petunia they bought this year to last year, but there are a lot of like effort in between just to bring you a little bit novelty to the new cultivar of the plant. Okay, so back to the point with your trajectory of horticulture. You grew up with plants and then you have worked in the industry for so many years and you have seen so many plants. Among all the plants that you have seen or worked with, which one is your favorite and why?
it's Triceratops. It's the toad lilies,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes way back. Parkseed and Wayside, they're in Greenwood, South Carolina. Every June they would have their growers' days, and when I was young, their grower days were basically they were cleaning out their facility. And I didn't realize this as a child. What they were doing was they were cleaning out their facility so they didn't have to hold stuff through the hot summer.
Yeah.
And then so that they could start bringing in new material for the fall. And so we would drive down from Clemson to Greenwood every June. And one year they had these little cups, 2.5-inch cups of Triceratops. It was either Hirta or Formosa stolonifera. I can't remember which variety or which species, but I paid my 25 cents and I brought my cup of Triceratops home. And that's been at least 30 years, if not closer to 40 years. I still have those plants.
Wow.
They're on the family farm in South Carolina. They're still growing. I love them. They're a shade plant. They flower. Most of the species flower in the fall. And it's just one of those neat little plants that they're popular in some places. Sometimes you ask people, have you ever heard of a toad lily or Triceratops? And I've never heard of that. But it's just a neat little plant.
Yeah, the Triceratops, I think there are like 2 to 3 cultivars that are well cultivated, at least in the U.S. or South North America. Herida and Formosa, the Herida is native to Japan and then is native to China and Taiwan. So those are little tiny orchid-like plants. So at least in Asian culture, at least with my international background, in Asian culture, I guess it's same to other culture as well. A lot of plants, people have their preferences to one plant, not just because of the appearance of the plant, but also because of the history and culture that they represent. For the tall lily, but at least in Asian culture, they are symbolized with good fortune, prosperity, elegance, and long life.
I'll give you another great example. In my family, we have a Philadelphus, a mock orange. I think it's Philadelphus odorata, the name of it. My mother has a cutting that she took from my grandmother's plant in Greenville, South Carolina. That plant came from my great grandmother, and it came from her grandmother. And so this plant, through cuttings, through the whole process, has been in our family for 4 generations. We've recently moved in the last 3 years. And so as soon as I'm happy with everything, I'm going to get cuttings from my mother's plant. And this plant, it's a native plant here in the Southeast. And one of my ancestors thought it was pretty. And so they moved it close to their homestead. And through the generations, right now I can see it in my head. It is on the bank next to my grandparents' homestead. This plant, through its lineage, at least for 100 years, has been in our family. And so, like you talk, I like the history of plants just as much as I do the plants themselves.
Yeah.
Another great plant is Hortia, Galaxifolia, the Oconee bell. And if you want to talk about just a neat plant, it has a very limited distribution in the northern part of South Carolina. but it was lost in the historic record for 100 years.
Wow.
When the great botanist came over from England, I believe it was Asa Gray, it was in his plant pressings that were sent back to France. They never found it again. That was the only record, was that pressed plant that went back to Europe. And 100 years later, a child was out playing in the woods and brought back flowers, and they realized, oh, this is the lost plant. And so it's that kind of stuff that it's part of our history. It's part of not just who we are, but who the plant is. And when you understand that history, like you said, it brings a connection to the plants that it just builds that strength and connection that we have with nature, with our plants, with everything.
Yeah, exactly. Can you tell us a little bit, like, because again, we talked about a little bit about each part within the horticulture in general, but can you draw us a big picture of the horticulture in the U.S., or specifically ornamental horticulture in the U.S.? What is the industry like, and what is the status? And then we can talk more about the changes, because I have viewed the changes for it's been 8 years since I moved to the US, and then I have seen a lot of changes just in the industry in and of itself. So can you first draw us a picture of the status of the ornamental horticulture in the US, and then we can talk more about the changes that happens over the past maybe a decade?
So right now, the status is, I would say it's good. Unlike most industries during the COVID lockdowns and even post-COVID years, the ornamental industry did phenomenally well for the most part. People, they were home, they couldn't go anywhere, and it's amazing the number of people that discovered either indoor gardening in general, and to that degree, there are some facilities, some nurseries that the vast majority of their business is still curbside. And so that's one of the trends that I have seen more. And again, it's due to COVID and the effects of the lockdown, everything pushed online. And so
Yeah.
these people would place orders for plant material, and it was, okay, you're going to pick your plants up on this day at this time. They would put them in a wagon, put them by the curb. The people would come out, get them. They would wave. There was no real connection or interaction. And like I said, there's some nurseries, some facilities that is still their main or primary sales methodology.
Yeah.
Is that curbside pickup. And it's both good and bad, because it limits people's interaction with the plants. But when you go to the greenhouse, you go to the nursery, that's when you see the neat new stuff. Stuff that they may not have on the web page yet, or they may only have 8 or 10, and it's not worth the effort. And that has been one of the bigger changes. But there's always weather impacts, whether it be drought, too much rain, and that's always funny for me to say, is we are dependent on the rain. And
Yeah.
if you get too much, it's a problem. And if you don't get enough, it's a problem. So you have to be in that happy, just kind of Goldilocks zone. And just some of the economic reports that we see and get and every quarter from USDA, from some of our economists and other industry partners, by region, I would say it's good this year. It's not great, it's not terrible, it's good. Everybody is fairly happy. Here in the Southeast, we're starting to get a little bit of drought, and so that's a concern going into the fall. The fall being the best time of year to plant plants, but everybody won't plant in spring. You do what you can, but I would say overall, it has been 2025 has been a good year.
Yeah.
And they're go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of the U.S. horticulture, and now we're talking, there's a term, it's called American made. So in terms of the plant and horticulture in general, do you know like how much and ratio, how much of those plants that we're normally seeing in our daily life or within the industry are American made, and how many of those are imported? Because I know there are certain plants that we just don't have the climate or environment to or even the neighbor forced to produce. So it'll be easier or cheaper for us to import from other countries and other regions instead of for us to produce them. So do you have the kind of like a rough number to draw the picture of the American made versus the non-American made plants in general?
I can't give an exact number, but I will say the majority of your trees and woody shrubs are going to be sole source produced in the United States. You may have the cuttings that come in for a new variety and that's more intellectual property rights type work than anything, but you may have those initial starts and then they'll do a cutting block or a propagation block and build from there. On your herbaceous stuff, particularly your annuals, like you said, most of those starts, and again, it's the cuttings most predominantly that are coming in from Central and South America. And that's more of a plant physiology issue than anything. You have these major producers, and because of the day length, the temperature, all these things, like you said, that we don't have consistent here in the United States, they're able to produce plant material year round. Believe it or not, the poinsettias for this Thanksgiving and this Christmas they're predominantly produced in Central and South America. The cuttings are because they can grow them during the summer and then ship them up here for the fall to finish out. And then as soon as those poinsettias come out or whatever the fall crop is, it may even be not mums, but there are some crops and they'll switch to the spring crops because again, the plants need a certain amount of temperature, a certain amount of day length to grow properly. And so we can either spend a lot of money doing artificial lighting to accomplish that, or you can build facilities in regions and locations where those physiological parameters are met. And so a lot of the herbaceous material is produced offshore, but it's just the cuttings. It will be brought into the United States and then be finished in the United States.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things about the plant in and itself is because it also depends on where the plant is native to. Because if they are native to, like for instance, the poinsettia, you mentioned that South American would produce them more. That's just because they are poinsettia is native to Mexican. So they are native to that specific environment. So that's why they can produce them with higher quantity easier. And so if we were to produce those type of plants, we have to create the environment that they will thrive. And so that might cause some issues for us here in the United States to do that for the plants. And some of those, we just don't have that. Even with the creation of the artificial environment, it will add extra input and it doesn't worth it in terms of bringing the benefits of growing there versus importing from somewhere else.
And it becomes cost prohibitive if we're honest about it. Because like you say, whether it be providing artificial light, heat, whatever the case may be, it adds input. And that is one thing that if you can make use of the natural conditions, it's better for everybody. It's better for the cost, it's better for the environment because we're not having to produce electricity. Yes, we are having to ship, but it is not, you can put 1,000 cuttings in a regular cardboard box. It's very cost effective, and that's the big thing. And then as we talk about jobs, their entire jobs are to look at these plants as they're coming in to make sure that there's no pests or diseases, anything like that. But I will say the growers pride themselves on producing the cleanest, highest quality plant material possible.
Yeah. And I love our industry just because I love the people, not just the plant. The people within the industry are so nice and they are so hardworking.
It really is. The nursery greenhouse industry, the people, a lot of the growers, their family. You may have 3, 4, some even 5 generations that have gone into building their company, and they take pride in it. And we're talking a little bit about plant quality. In the last 10 to 20 years, quality was one of those things, especially we'll go 20 years ago or so, the late 90s, early 2000s. plant quality was not always assured. And it would be written into the contracts that the plants had to be certain height, certain quality, certain whatever. And now that's just the norm. That's the expectation.
Yeah.
That every plant that leaves your facility is going to be of the absolute highest caliber. And I was in a meeting with several growers, and that was one of the things that they said. We pride ourselves on having high quality plants, and that has now become the industry norm, industry standard, rather than the exception.
Yeah.
Is that high quality. And I'll say that's one of the things that has really, really changed in the industry, is that it is the highest quality. The plants are phenomenal, everything. And again, it's just that change in industry, change in mindset.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that already. Those are some of the changes that you have observed. But besides that, are there any changes that you have observed in the past, I would say, 10 years in our industry? Because one of the things that I have observed is that a lot of like the trade shows, they used to be very big, and now we have a phase where we don't see a whole lot of the trade show anymore, or even with the current existing trade shows, they become smaller. Or American Hort is still the largest trade show in the United States, where besides men's, I don't know how, well, maybe those two are similar, but for the states or regional, there used to be like at least each state used to have a trade show that hosted every year, and to discipline with all those new varieties and new products that the state offers. But right now, it's not that quite true. So can you tell us a little bit about that, or any other changes that you have observed for the at least past 10, or maybe more than 10 years?
I'll go way back, and when I first got started in horticulture, name varieties were the rarity. And now that's the expectation, that every variety it's a known variety, a name variety. And again, when I first started, that was very uncommon. It was just a red petunia, a red geranium. And so now part of it goes back to the marketing. When you open up a home and garden magazine, there's a full page spread of whatever the latest, greatest tree, shrub, plant is, so that when you go to the garden center, I saw a picture of this is what I want. And it's been interesting to see how that has changed the market demand. And to your point about the trade shows, I think the trade shows go back to the cost. A lot of the growers, for the state shows, for the regional shows, they may have done 8 or 10 a year. And so a lot of the growers that have retired the last couple of years, that was one of their biggest things, was we have become more selective in the shows that we exhibit at, more selective in the shows we attend, because it is becoming cost prohibitive.
As a grower yourself and a researcher yourself, and within American Hort, what are the main challenges that you would say that our industry is facing now? And are there any like solutions? Because I know American Hort and HRI and you guys are working closely with the industry to come up with ideas to help them. Can you explain some of those challenges and some of the solutions that you guys are in the process of developing?
So labor is probably the biggest issue that I hear repeatedly, and our lead team, indeed, they're working with H2B, H2A, and trying to get more workers that way. There is a move towards more automation, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because some of the automation jobs are the jobs where you have more injury. And there's been a lot of move towards automation. And that's one of the big issues, or the biggest issue, in my opinion, is labor. Other issues, and I will tell any younger person or older person that's looking for a career change, phytosanitary. So that's plant health, that's disease, insects. If you want job stability, if you want a scary day every day, go into phytosanitary work. whether it be at a state level, a federal level. A lot of the larger operations now have their own integrated pest management phytosanitary person that does all of their pest and disease diagnostics. That's job security, because there is something new every day, every week. And sometimes it is just a minor issue. Sometimes it is catastrophic. And so part of our job is, if something looks like it's going to have potential to be catastrophic, is to work with the growers, to work with the states. There's a group called the National Plant Board, and it is all health regulation officers, which are at a state level, and then there's the state plant health. They're called SPUDs. I can't remember what it is, but they're federal officers that work in each state. And so we work with National Plant Board, which is a gathering of them. USDA has a division called Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS. They have a subdivision called Plant Protection and Quarantine, PPQ. I meet with PPQ officers almost every week, and we discuss what is on the horizon for pest and disease. What are we having problems with now? Earlier, I mentioned cotton jacet or two-spot cotton leafhopper. That's a current issue in the Southeast. And so we work with everybody to try to address these issues for the best outcome. And whether that outcome be quarantines, best management practices for spray, scouting, treatments, whatever, we work with everyone to have the best outcome, not just for our growers, but for any other affected group. So with cotton jacet, it's a severe pest of cotton. So we're working with the National Cotton Council and some of their affiliated groups. We're working with, like I said, PPQ, APHIS, the states, to try to help figure out how we can scout for this pest, how we can control it, and how we can prevent it from being a major issue, not only to cotton, but to okra production and to ornamental production. There is a lot of cooperation, and there's a lot of behind the scenes work that even our growers don't necessarily see.
Yeah, so basically, I'm glad you mentioned the collaborations and all those things that even our growers may not saying it. But as a researcher, as a people who's working from a land grant institution, do you think what do you think the researcher like me, when people who work for the industry and the land grant institution, how can we better help with the grain industry in general in collaboration with the industry and just to meet the requirements or needs for the growers?
My best suggestion, if you're a new faculty member, a new researcher, call the grower, say, hey, can I come and meet you? Can I come and tour your facility? They would love to have you come out. I don't care where you're at. You have to form those relationships with the growers. And Ping, I've worked with you for a while now. The growers know that you genuinely care about them, that you have an interest in their world, in their work, and in their lives. And if you can show somebody with sincerity that I have a genuine interest in the well-being of everything, that opens up doors that you just calling or emailing is not going to open up. Yeah. They want to know who you are. They want to see your face. And when you go out and see them, they're going to tell you stuff that they may not tell you on the phone or over the email. As you're walking through the rows of their greenhouse or their nursery, oh yeah, by the way, I've seen this, and we've changed our production method, and now it's 20% faster, 20% better. That's an anecdotal comment. You as a researcher, you say, hey, can I take this method and do some research on it to see if we can improve the entire industry? And I would say 99 times out of 100, they're like, absolutely. And then you as a researcher, you go back to them and say, I'd like to use your facility as one of my research sites. They love that. They want to be involved. They want to see how their tax money, how their donations are used to better their industry, to better their businesses, their families, everything. And so that would be my biggest and best suggestion, is get to know the growers in your state, in your region, and make yourself available. They want to see you. They want to know who you are. And I cannot overemphasize that. Make yourself available to them for whatever they need.
Yeah, I can agree with you more on that. As an extension specialist myself, I I enjoy that. I agree with you that at least for extension for ornamental specialists like me, we need to go out there and talk to them. It's nothing comparable to just a cold email or a phone call because they can't see you. They can't get to know who you are and by just text.
Exactly. And I'll take it to the next step. If you're coming into the industry, if you're fresh out of college or you're high school or whatever, go work. If someone tells you, hey, I'm going to show you how to do this type of grafting, or it doesn't matter if you learned that in a lab at college, let them show you because they're going to do stuff differently. You're going to learn these little tips and tricks of the trade that you may not have learned in class. And so horticulture and agriculture in general is a very unique career because you can come in with absolutely no experience and in a year or two be fairly proficient in what you do. And so that's my thing. If somebody's going to teach you something, be willing, open yourself up to learn that because they may have a lifetime of experience that they're trying to share with you. Something else I would recommend is, again, join some of these associations, American Hort, IPPS. If you have a state association, join them. Get out and meet the growers, meet the people in the industry. They love to see more young people involved. And there's this expectation that, you know, when people come in from outside the industry, they're like, I need help with this. Go talk with your neighbors. And I can't get people from outside the industry to understand most of the other what would be your competitors in another industry. They are your competitors, but they're happy to help you because your success is their success. And there's so much of that. I'm happy to teach you. I'm happy to share almost everything, not everything, with you. And they want to see your business be successful. They want to see you be successful. And in some of the other industries I've worked with and dealt with, that's not the case. Your competition from day one, and horticulture and in agriculture in general, it is I hate to say a family dynamic, but that's what it is. They want to see you succeed.
So you briefly mentioned some of those potential job or career opportunities for any young folks out there who may not thought about getting into horticulture. Can you elaborate or give us some examples of potential job opportunities for them to explore the potential of horticulture career?
So you can get jobs in anything. And I know that's a broad generalization thing, but
Yeah.
there are people that their job is entirely sales. They may never see a plant, but they go to the nurseries, the greenhouses, the retailers for their company, and they're selling. This is this year's cutting line, this year's propagation line. What can I interest you in? They may never see a plant, but they're in that and they have to know them. So if you want to do sales, that's an opportunity. I'll stick with the sales. There's so many inputs. Somebody has to produce the containers. Somebody has to produce the substrates, the fertilizers. My favorite are the tags and labels. You want to talk about change? You might can see them over my shoulder.
Yeah.
I've got some NFC tags.
Mm.
So you can put all the data in that and you just walk by with your phone and scan it and it can give you all the production data for that plant. You put that on a tag, and when your customers come in and scan it, they get all that information. And it's not just this is the plant and it is everything. Like I said, plant breeders, engineers for facilities. If you want a job in horticulture, there will be a place for you. If you want to just learn how to grow plants, most facilities, they will start you off as depending on the operation, they call it an area grower or a section grower, and you'll have maybe an acre of plants. And then there'll be a grower above you who you will answer to. They'll have 10, 20, 40 acres. And then there'll be the head grower, and they're over the entire facility. And so you have all this going on. And so, again, I can't overemphasize, if you come in and are willing to learn, if you want to learn, there's opportunities for you.
Yeah, because the reason why I'm asking you this is also traced back to one of the observations that I have witnesses for the past couple years. In horticulture in general, we have the majority of those like owners where people are, I don't know if they're still like the baby boomers, but a lot of older folks who are still in the active mode of production when own their business. But they, as much as they love in plant production and in this industry in general, they are going to face the fact that they have to sit down a little bit. And one of the trends that I have seen is that a lot of like younger folks who are the next generation, the moment that they're some of their, maybe their dad would ask them, hey, do you want to take over the business? A lot of times they would say no. The moment they got the business, they're gonna sell it to somebody else and take the money and go away, do something else. So can you give us a little bit more reasons to help them to stay in this industry? Because a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of those nurseries are family owned for generations after generations, and I would love to have that legendary family owned legend carry over, just to so that we can have a diverse business mode in our industry.
And it's an interesting point that you bring up. We do have a lot of owners that are aging out, and there's traditional transfers, and then I think it's non-traditional transfers.
Mm-hmm.
American Hort, we have a group that they've got the steps laid out. They can walk you through the process.
Of
And
succession
so if it's
plan.
going, yeah, exactly. They will help you with a transition plan. And so the traditional is it's going from one generation of the family to the next. Those are, I won't say easy, but they're easy. It's a fairly straightforward process. On the non-traditionals, what that is, as you said, you have an operation where the next generation doesn't necessarily want to take over. And so the owners will offer it to, the company leadership that is not family. They'll offer it to somebody, and there's an entire process that they go through. Very rarely is it a direct takeover. Usually it's a kind of a gradual thing. It may be a 10-year plan or whatever plan, where the leadership or the new owners slowly take over, slowly learn more of that back room, behind the scenes business that they may not have necessarily known was going on. Just the day-to-day operations that the family would handle. And so it is it's an interesting process. We do have a couple of operations that are currently doing traditionals. There's one or two doing non-traditionals. But if you get into the industry and say, hey, I want to own my own operation, but I don't have that, start putting feelers out. And this is why, as somebody coming into the industry, it's important to go to these trade shows. It's important to get out and know people, because if you start whispering, hey, I'm looking to buy my own place, I don't have the money to directly buy it, there's probably going to be somebody that's ready to retire, and they will bring you in and help you through this process, and you end up with their operation in some shape, form, or fashion. I'm providing an oversimplification of it, but that's how it works. Because, like you say, the other two options are for it to either close or just to be sold into the wild.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not always the best plan, because it's when you have somebody new come in and take over, they may not know the ins and outs, and there's always some adjustment. But yeah, we do have at American Hort the kind of the roadmap for transitions, both traditional and non-traditional.
Yeah, the sad part for me is to know that most of those agricultural horticulture properties are facing the challenge of being pushed out because a lot of times they were like, okay, you have a greenhouse operation here, but the land in and of itself is worth more if we shut down everything that you have in there and transform it into a residential area. And that's one of the challenges that a lot of people in this industry are facing. So if a young grower asks you how to set themselves up for a long-term success, what kind of suggestion that you would tell them?
Work for somebody else first. That is my first suggestion. Don't open your own business day one. Go get experience. And don't be afraid to, if you stay at one job 2 or 3 years, that's fine. But just go out and get experience. There's a couple of family growers that I know and work with. If you decide to come back and work at the family nursery, the family greenhouse, you have to work somewhere else for 5 years or 10 years before you can come into the family operation, because they want you to go out and get new ideas and see how other people do it before you come home, if you will. And so I encourage that for everybody. Go out and work for somebody else. See what works for them, what doesn't work, where do they deviate or do something different than somebody else or what you were taught. But that is my biggest and best suggestion is when you're in college or you're in high school, go work, do internships, summer internships, afternoon work, whatever the case may be. If you have a facility close by, take that as an opportunity to go and to work with them and learn, because that is the biggest thing, is learning that knowledge, that information that they have as growers, that is so valuable that I honestly can't put a price on it. And after you feel comfortable, go work for somebody else, because you're that comfort is deceitful. But then if you want to open your own facility, I would do that.
Yeah,
and
I agree with that.
And I'll also encourage you. We're doing a nursery tour next week in Maryland, Virginia area. Go on those tours, take pictures, because you're going to go and see stuff that you're like, oh, I never thought about this being a problem or this being a whatever. And I love going on nursery tours. I love going on greenhouse tours. I just like seeing how different people have solved the same problem, or how the same production idea, how it translates out into so many different iterations, but you end up at the same place. And I love seeing that, because you're going to open a facility up and you're going to face your own challenges. And while how they do it may not be an exact fit, you'll have an idea of, oh, so and so did this way. If I change it just a little bit, it'll be a perfect fit for me.
Yeah.
And getting out and seeing those things, again, having those work experiences at other operations, they are so valuable. I cannot overemphasize that.
Yeah, I agree with that. So are there any last comment or suggestion you want to leave for our audience today?
Ornamental horticulture is a fantastic career. It's a fantastic industry. And whatever angle you want to take, whatever career you want to pursue, there's a very good chance there's a place for you in horticulture.
Thank you. If people want to find more information on you or American Hort, where do you recommend them go look for more?
So go to our webpage, americanhort.org. Ping, I think that's the right address off the top of my head. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'll put the right link in on the show notes so that people can find out more if they want to. All right, thank you, Michael, for those
Thank you, Ping.
wonderful conversations. I have learned a lot, and we know each other a little bit. We know each other very well, but I still learned a lot, like in terms of the horticulture. And so, thank you so much for sharing your experience and expertise in horticulture and your passion in horticulture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ping.
Conversation like this only happen when you support the show. For more information and find ways to support us, please go to bnbpod.com, bnbpod.com. If you like what you are hearing, spread the word and share this podcast with the people you love. Make sure you hit that subscription button and give a review for the podcast. And as always, go check out the show notes to learn more about this topic and other topics we featured on the show at bnbpod.com. Thank you for listening. Till the next time, stay healthy and go plants.